Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, family. I should say good afternoon. It is now 12:06. I've had to redo the video twice. I've been answering phone calls and students are calling in. New students are coming in, which is wonderful. I'm going to have to not cut this short, but somewhat cut this short. Let's a couple of things. I have removed the ability for certain students, all of you actually, because you're all it's response. You can't spam the answers. If you continue to attempt to spam the answers, it'll be a 0, and you will not get credit for watching the video, which is 1 hour. And because this video is an hour, it counts towards your participation. So there's no easy way around it. You got to watch the video front to back. I'm going to hide a magic word of the day in here. So there are going to be 4 questions. Make it maybe 5 then. Each question is worth 20 points. Passing scores, I guess, is 60, so you can get 2 wrong. Maybe it'll be just 4 questions at 25 points each. You get 1 wrong. 3 questions should be able to prove that you watched this video. If you get 2 wrong on the style of question that I make, you didn't watch the video. So maybe it'll be what's the topic of today and what's the magic word of the day. I think those are going to be 2 primary questions. And then there are going to be 2 questions about what it is I talked about during our morning lecture. Job Corps in general is cracking down, so they are no longer, I can't just say he was on a Zoom meeting. That only gets you attendance. That doesn't get you hours logged in. But if you watch this video, which will be about an hour, and you answer the questions, that's an hour's worth of work that I can mark off on your attendance sheet, which is critical now. All right? So don't try to game the system. Work with me, not against me. I do this because I'm trying to help. And when you try to do an end run, it messes everything up for everybody. So anyways, multiple submissions are now computer stopped. So if you mess up, you have to email me and I have to reset it for you. And then it'll be a question of a conversation of, so tell me, what was my video about? And I'll talk to you about it. And it'll prove you didn't watch the video. So just watch this video. That's it. Simple. Just put it on play and listen. And obviously nothing's happening with the video. So as long as you have the audio going and listening to me, you'll be good. Because you'll be able to answer the questions from it. So obviously reading glossary terms. That'll be the first thing we do in the coming months. I'll probably go to chapter by chapter analysis where we answer the pictures and questions at the back of each chapter. I'm looking at the skill drills and I'm looking at the questions that they have, ASC type questions. Oh, we all know Mr. Romer can't read without his glasses. Here's standard questions that you guys should be answering, not the questions that I ask. Tech A says the one function of oil is to clean. Tech B says that the one function of oil is to cushion. Who is correct? 2 techs are discussing 5W20 oil. Tech A says the W stands for weight. Tech B says the W stands for winter. Who is correct? Tech A says the higher the viscosity number, the thicker the oil. Tech B says the most modern vehicles use single weight oil. Who is correct? Tech A says that spin-on oil filters need RTV gasket sealer to seal the gasket. Tech B says that some oil filters use a replaceable paper filter cartridge. Who is correct? Tech says the oil pressure will typically be low if the oil level is at the add line on the dipstick. Tech B says that a cracked pickup tube could cause low oil pressure. Who is correct? So those are the kinds of questions that eventually I will be creating tests and using the questions directly out of the book. Okay, but for now we're having our fun questions. We have a lecture, you watch the lecture, and you answer the fun questions, and you get credit. And when Department of Labor starts adding more and more to the pile, then we'll go to the chapter questions, and you guys will be responsible for doing that. And yes, that means at a certain point, each of you will be receiving either a redacted copy of the book, meaning I'll have to scan each page off the chapter and then email it to you or something. Or we'll just mail all the books. That's a pain in the ass. We have 40 students. I don't think we have 40 books. We'll see. Anyways, yesterday we did all-wheel drive. Today we will talk about alternating current, or one form of AC. Now, alternating current, AC, can be written either with letters A and then C, or the letter A, then the slash, and then C, which is different than air conditioning. Alternating current. So alternating current is a way of describing the flow of electricity. I'll read you. Yeah. A type of current flow that flows back and forth. Even better, back and forth. That's a bit of a misnomer because it doesn't actually describe the power production of an alternating current. The simplest way I can describe to you the power of alternating current is if you're at a wood shop and someone hands you a handsaw, you take a piece of wood and the handsaw and you go rrr, 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 rrr. You are showing the exact effects of an alternating current. Power production starting in this direction, power production showing in this direction. That's it. Push, pull, push, pull. An alternating current doesn't just send electrons down one way. It is electrons holding hands like a beaded necklace, right? All the little electron circles are tied to each other, holding hands, and the alternating current pushes the electrons this way to do work and then pulls the electrons this way to do work. Here comes the fun part. If I have a saw and I have a piece of wood and I saw in this manner, every second I do one push, one pull. One push, one pull. That is 1 hertz. One line above the power on the pull side and one on the push side. So don't think of it as positive and negative. Electricity will flow on the pull side of the curve, come down and go through the pull side. Pull side of the curve, push side of the curve. Pull side of the curve, push side of the curve. Imagine a solid line in the middle, which shows the difference between the push side and the pull side. Okay? It's interchangeable. This can be push or pull. This can be push or pull. Whatever floats your boat, however you want to describe it in that moment. But the idea is alternating current operates in the same way as you cutting wood. No push nor pull is stronger. They're both equally the equal amount of strength on both the push and the pull. And work is done on both sides of that equation, both on the push side and on the pull side. Alternating current takes advantage of the fact that electrons can flow both ways. They don't just go from A to B, they can go back and forth. And as a matter of fact, electrons along an electrical wire, it is the pushing of the electrons and pulling of the electrons that is the power. The electrons do the work when they go near or through a motor, or they give off thermal energy when they go through a light. Okay? So that, we're talking about frequency. So one push and pull is 1 hertz. If I did whoop whoop 10 times a second, whoop 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 whoop, whoop, that's 10 push and pulls in 1 second. That's 10 hertz. Herz. Hertz. Not, oh, I hurt my shoulder. No, hertz. Hertz. Herz. It's named after a guy, Dr. Hertz, who coined the term of the process of how often electricity goes out and in. He worked, I think, extensively with Tesla, but it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. What matters is we all understand what a hertz is. It is the frequency of how many push-pulls electricity has performed for us. Now, here comes an interesting thing. When you push-pull 60, I think it's 60 times a second. Boo, right? It's a tone. Here comes an interesting fact. Some people can hear that push-pull at 60 times a second from fluorescent light bulbs in classrooms. Some people get headaches from it because they can hear that tone. Wait, let me check this. Old fluorescent lighting operated at 60 hertz. Or is it 60 kilohertz? No, 60 hertz. Let's see where my tone generator is. Tone generator. And let's dial it down to 60. Or how about 70 is close enough for now. Well, I can do 60. Ready? "60 times a second." That's what it looks like on a scope. So let's hear what it sounds like. That's a very loud version of it. But that's what people hear, that hum. That particular hum at that, and that's, let me give you a clear sign. Sine waves are silent. Sawtooth is really a nasty tone. But we can hear it on a square wave. See, square wave. We can also set it up for sawtooth. Sounds really horrible. Triangle, we don't hear it, and sine, we don't hear it. So that's a 60 hertz signal. And I will even Ask. No, I don't want this. There we go. Search 60HZ. That's all you got to type into your Google search bar. And 60 hertz will come up. There we go. Wow, the screen doesn't want to show my utility frequency, the waveform of 230 volt 50 hertz compared with 110 volt 60 hertz. That's the utility frequency, power line frequency of the American power grid. 230 volt 50 and 110 volt 60. Yep. And you'll be interesting to note that they, even when you talk about monitors, TV monitors, their refresh rates are set for 60 hertz. Right? High refresh rate. Now they have even better, which is great for like high def and stuff. But 60 hertz represents the baseline for that. Okay? So, is there a way to increase that amount? Absolutely. 60 hertz uniform electromagnetic field promotes normal. Sorry, I'm just reading interesting Google notes on 60 hertz. So, anyways, that's the frequency of alternating current. Current alternates between pushing and pulling. It pushes the electrons first, then it pulls the electrons second. And it does that repeatedly every second in an alternating current field, which is different than direct current, which is just electrons traveling one way, always just one way. We have in our automobiles, both modern automobiles have both 12 volt direct current and alternating current fields within the ECU. 12 volt direct current would be something like headlights. It's electricity flowing out to the headlights. Turn signals, the horn. That's electricity flowing directly out to the horn. Electricity, 12 volts. 12 volts flows from the battery to the starter motor. 12 volts flows directly from the battery to the main bus terminal, which then gives 12 volts direct current to all of the interior stuff in our car. The only places where it starts to become alternating current is within the computer systems or computer subsystems in a car. So your car stereo might get 12 volts direct current, but inside it's got a little thing that changes it into an alternating current so that the little chipsets inside can operate properly. Okay? We're not going to get into that right now. We're just talking about alternating current. So that it's really important for you guys that understanding alternating current is that first the electrons push and then they pull. That's all that they do. They hold hands, and they push, and they pull. I'm going to talk about this and other topics this morning, but you know what? Let's move forward. Let's see if we can't cover some ground. Okay, alternative fuel. A non-petroleum based motor fuel. Alternative fuels can be based on alcohols. As a matter of fact, there are some jokes that are true wherein people have been able to run cars On whiskey, if the moonshine is of sufficient, has a sufficient alcohol content, if it's got enough alcohol in it, you can burn drinking alcohol like whiskey, moonshine, in a car. Absolutely. It's expensive, so people are like, well, why don't you do it? Because a fifth of a whiskey is $6. A gallon of gas is $3. What's cheaper? Can you go into the store and buy a bottle of Morgan's 151 rum and stick it in your gas tank and run it? Absolutely. Your exhaust will smell funny because there's a lot of sugars in it, and you run the risk of putting a little micro layer of burnt caramel over some things, and that's one of you burn. When you burn it, it smells funny. Much like this is a funny story. Much like people who have diesel cars that burn biofuels, they have these systems where you take oil, and you can get the oil from a lot of different places. And one of the places, my glasses keep bending. I don't know why. Well, anyways, you can buy oil. Close. You can get this oil from McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Dairy Queen, Five Brothers, any place that has fryers. The oil from the fryers and the friolators can be the liquid oil when it's finished being used by these companies, because it's all chunked up and it's got all kinds of crap in it. Not crap, but I mean, like, someone's been using the same oil for French fries for a week. It tends to build up a lot of like little pieces of potato that have been in the fryer. They sink to the bottom and burn. So a lot of these are very caramelized and chunked and burned ash, very charcoaly food products. And companies come in and they vacuum out the oil tanks from these McDonald's and Burger King, and it costs Burger King and McDonald's and Wendy's and all these other fast food restaurants money to have the oil suctioned out, because these companies don't do it for free. And so the great part is, if you are one of these people who has a biofuel reactor at your house, and it's called a biofuel reactor, you can go to McDonald's or Wendy's or Burger King or something, go to them, go to the manager, and go, hey, I have a biofuel car. Can I get some oil? And they'll go, how much do you want? Fill you right up. And a lot of the times people show up with a pickup truck with these big, huge metal mesh canisters, 3 foot wide, 3 foot tall, 3 foot deep, these big things, and they just fill up with oil. And so what they do is they take this vegetable oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, animal fat oil, whatever oil it is that you're using, and they take it back to their house where the biofuel reactor is, and they put it through. And the first thing they do is they take the oil and it goes through a simple mesh filter, like an oil filter or a gas filter, or a coffee filter, something that has a solid mesh component to it. And all the oil drips through, and all the little chunks of potato chips and chunks of French fries and chunks of, chicken nuggets and chunks of fried fish and all the other things that they fry. All that gets separated out mechanically by a filter, the mesh filter. And I get all these little pebbly looking things. That's the first stage. The second stage is that after filtering out, so it's just a almost pure liquid oil with no contaminants, chunks of things in it. little sand grains of flour, right? Because that's the doughy part of a chicken nugget. You got to put it in flour. Anyways, all that's been cleared out, so it's almost a pure liquid. The pure liquid then gets mixed. It's not a catalyzer. I haven't researched it yet, so I'm just pulling out of general bits of knowledge. I do know that there's an additive that starts the chemical reaction of breaking the oil down into a usable, compressible, and ignitable fuel. And it's a 2-step process, I think. I'll research it in a minute. Wherein you add the stuff to it, and you just get little vials, and they're not expensive. You add it. One little vial takes care of 600 gallons or something, right? And you take a little bit of the oil from your previous batch, and you add it back to the first batch to start this enzyme catalyst that breaks the vegetable oil down and renders a usable fuel. And all of the vegetable oil, I don't think there's a byproduct of it. If it is, it's just vegetable oil, right? Something super basic, something you just pour in your garden and things grow better, right? But you're able to use this vegetable oil that's been rendered down into a biofuel, botanical, biotics, right? Biofuel. And this biofuel then sits in a cistern, in a container, where you then fill up your diesel car like a gas pump, right? But for diesels, and you can run your diesel car on the biofuel that you've used your biofuel reactor to create. Now here comes the fun part. All of it seems fun, but this is the really fun part. I know 2 people who own a biofuel car. They're in Connecticut. They're neighbors of a friend of mine. The funny part is anytime I visit George and I sit and I'm having a beer with them and they leave or they go somewhere, the whole neighborhood smells like French fries. I swear it's the funniest thing. You'll be sitting there having a beer and you'll hear them hum, hum, with their, Mercedes turbo diesel, which is unmodified. You don't need to the turbo diesel accepts biofuel as if it was just diesel. It's been treated and thinned out enough so that it runs in just a standard, and it's a newer one, like a 2000 or something, Mercedes-Benz turbo diesel. And man, oh man, it's the funniest thing. You're sitting there having a beer, they'll drive by, you'll wave, and then you go, oh my God, I can smell French fries. I'm hungry. Inevitably, we're like, you want to go to like Wendy's or Burger King, dude? I'm starving. They drove by. Mark and Ellen drove by, and now I want French fries. So yeah, that is an alternative fuel for diesels. Now, does the same exist for cars? Yeah, you could use whiskey, and you end up smelling like burnt sugar if it's just pure whiskey you're using, not mixed with gasoline. Rum is good because it only has a little bit of color and caramel in it. Can you use like a high potency vodka, like a moonshine? Absolutely. If the flammability is right, the reactivity is right, and so much so that you can. So moonshine made from corn burns especially well in automobiles, to the point where they actually add it. Corn-based ethanol. Oh, well, corn-based alcohol is called ethanol. Ethanol is a biofuel too. It's made from corn. It is considered an alternative fuel. So you can also get cars. Interestingly enough, pure ethanol is called E85. You can make tons of power using E85. 3 to 5 times as much power. No, revise that statement. You can increase power by, if you're making 1,000 horsepower in an engine. So let me get the power figures right in my head before I start claiming false things. So if you make 1,000 horsepower on your engine on pump gas 91, you can bump it and maybe make 11 or 1,200 on race fuel, high octane 106. If you go straight ethanol, I've heard of 1,000 horsepower cars going to like 2,000 horsepower. I've heard 2,500 be talked about before big issues come into play. So you can easily, with the right tunes, add 50 to 100% horsepower just by burning E85. But you've got to tune for it. Because E85, so what's the stoichiometric value for gasoline to air? What is it? 14.7 to 1, right? 14.7 parts of the air to 1 part of fuel. What's the stoichiometric? So let's find out. Using our handy dandy cell phone, we're going to go stoic for ethanol. Boop. Stoichiometric for ethanol. And stoichiometric measurements for ethanol are dun 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 9. There it is. 9.76 to 1. So where you need 14 parts of air, you only need 9.7. So what that means is you don't need as much air, but you need more fuel. Ethanol lines tend to run really big. Really big. You flow a ton of ethanol to make power. As a matter of fact, if you look at ethanol lines, cars specifically designed to run on ethanol, the injectors are bigger, the fuel lines are bigger, because you got to push more alcohol in to get the same power out. But the great thing about ethanol is you can give it ridiculous amounts of timing, and you can stuff a ridiculous amount of air in it, and it's a very forgivable fuel, and you can make stupid power out of an engine. Silly power. So much so that a lot of like Koenigsegg, they set it to run for the country in, but they have an internal switching mechanism that lets you go from low power gas to high power ethanol. It's amazing, but you gotta flow. Like you go from a 1/4-inch gas tube to a 1-inch gas tube or ethanol tube. You have to flow the fuel. Otherwise, you won't make the power numbers. Interestingly enough, my truck is a biofuel truck. It's got a smart sensor, can tell when I'm running ethanol. The difference is, here comes the fun part. My truck isn't designed for power production, but it can use ethanol because per gallon in a non-power production state, I want to say it was cheaper to have a higher ethanol count, corn alcohol count in the gasoline, which means that if I went to the pumps and filled up, it wouldn't be as expensive. Some nations like Brazil, I think they're almost 100% ethanol at the pumps. I have to look that up too. But there are some countries where they just run straight E85, where they export the predominant. So the difference is they have fields of corn. They have cornfields, just like we do in the United States. Big cornfields. And these big cornfields make a lot of corn. And so they take this corn and they feed everybody with it. The corn that's left over, say you get a corn on the cob and it's all a little yucky, right? Can't sell it. So they throw it in a bin. And they do this with all kinds of corn, human edible corn, corn for animals, corn for various reasons. But when the corn starts to go bad and they can't sell it, they put it in the special bin. And this bin, which houses all this corn, they blend up into a mash. Like, you guys ever go to the store and you get a can of corn for dinner and you're all excited because you're going to have shepherd's pie, and you make the mashed potatoes and you cook the meat, and the last thing you need to do is make the corn. So you get the can of corn and you open it up and you pour it out, and it isn't whole corn kernels. It is that cream of corn. Like someone smushed it all. Oh, I don't even know why they sell it. Yeah, bad. Anyways, that creamed corn, that mushed up corn, is the beginning of making corn mash. It's actually that, and they physically, like they put it through the blender to make it super, like almost like pea soup, that same that thick consistency. Well, they make corn, they put it through blenders, they make it super fine, they crush it up till it makes like a corn chowder kind of thickness, right? And then they put it in a still. And what they do is they add a little bit of yeast to it, right? The same stuff you find in between your toes, yeasty things. You can have yeast, you can have baker's yeast. They have yeast that they use for alcohol production, which is a specific enzyme of yeast. And I think that the biofuel for diesels is also like a form of yeast. And I'm almost sure of it. So one of the great things about yeast is, for those of you who've ever had an uncle who's made beer, is if you add yeast to something that has sugar in it, and corn has a lot of sugar in it, what's the byproduct? Carbon dioxide, because it adds pressure, and alcohol. Alkaloids, the alkalines and the alkaloids, which are the precursor to alcohol, are developed by the yeast eating through the corn mash. Now, if you have a still and you put 6 gallons or 10 gallons of corn mash in it, and you add a scoop of yeast into it, and maybe you add some sugar to really start the process, and you mix it all around, and you warm it up to like 100 degrees, just 100, not 300, 400, 500, just 100 degrees. You warm the mix up, and then you cover it. You cover it like a pressure cooker, right? You seal the top of the lid so you got fire cooking underneath it, and the fire warms up the mash to like 100, 130 degrees, and the yeast is activated. It's like, ooh, this is perfect for us. We got corn to eat. It's mixed with sugar. There's plenty of sugary carbohydrates here to digest, and these little yeasts are farting out a little bit of carbon dioxide and a lot of alkaloids, to the point where after like 3 or 4 days of letting it percolate like this, you crank up the heat and you really start to cook the mixture. And then you have at the top of the still a little tube that comes out the top and then goes around another cask. But this cask is filled with cold water, super cold water. So what happens is, as the yeast is eating the corn and farting out carbon dioxide and alkaloids, the carbon dioxide and the alkaloids float up, and they're coming down this tube because it's the only way the pressure gets out. And as the tube gets wrapped around this cold water cistern, this tub of cold water, or sometimes the tube is wrapped around inside the tub, a lot of coils, like it goes all the way around. And as this cools off, the alcohol condenses back into liquid form. And what you have, if it's you just do it one stage, is moonshine. You've got moonshine, liquid alcohol from little yeast. What's the best thing to call yeast? Bacteria. Yeah. Farting alkaloids. So when we drink, that's what we're doing. We're imbibing bacteria fart. I figured you guys get a kick of that. Anyways, so alternative fuels take advantage of this yeast eating this bacteria called yeast, and the yeast eats the carbohydrates in the corn, and corn specific. The specific name for this alcohol that condenses out of the gas from the top is called ethanol. And depending on how hot you make the mash and how much pressure you make it, and the purity and the amount of sugar in your corn, and if you want to add sugar, you can, and there are other additives that you can make it, you can really ramp up the proof or the amount of alcohol in that batch of ethanol that you have. Now, ethanol for automotive consumption has additives put into the liquid. There are detergents. There's even a level of lubricant brought into it. They are able to introduce chemically a nitrogen into it. I know Sun or Shell is big on nitrogen injection of their ethanol. So their ethanol has a high level of nitrogen in it that is bound up with, so it's like basically you have a pool of ethanol and you have a little hose and you turn on the hose and the hose goes to a nitrogen canister, and the nitrogen canister under pressure permeates it, it bubbles through the alcohol, and you end up with a liquid that has a lot of nitrogen in it. And then you could literally add like little cups of whatever chemicals you want for stable burning and knock inhibitors. Scientists have found out certain things inhibit knock really well. Lead used to be a thing. A lot of, lead does a lot of bad stuff, and coming out the tailpipe is bad. But lead was a great lubricant and anti-knock mechanism because of it was just because of what it was. But you can't have lead, not the form of lead that like the gray stuff, but you can make it into a superfine powder and then make a solute of it, like dissolve it in acid, and then that's added into gasoline by the 1 capful per gallon, and the acid is diluted in the gasoline and you don't even notice it. The engine likes it because the engine notices it, but you don't. And that's how we get things like heavy lead mixed in with fuels. But these people, these chemists that work at the petroleum institutes and petroleum producers, they've got this all figured out. They know exactly what to add, what chemicals to add to help with the automobile engine running properly on ethanol. So that is another alternative fuel, a non-petroleum based motor fuel. When someone says petroleum is any kind of gasoline that came from extracting oil from the ground. Oil from the ground, or what we like to call dinosaur blood, or mush baby dinosaurs, right? No, joking. is really the compression of biomaterial, like the bodies of dinosaurs and animals and everything, and leaves and trees and grass and shrubs and fish and anything living from millions of years ago, all squished and mushed together in this great big paste. And then it gets trapped underground as more and more layers of dirt go on top of it. It compresses it under pressure. Ooh, here's another thing, under pressure, right? And it has enzymes in there eating away at all this material. But instead of able to farting their alcohol into the air and escaping, it can't. It's trapped. It's all trapped. So all the gases that all these yeast bacteria and other bacteria make, it goes through and it chews up through all this organic matter. Organic not meaning fresh. It means organics is plants, animals, flora and fauna, organic materials, and compressed under thousands of feet of earth, and it can't escape, and all this stuff is going on under our feet, thousands of feet below. And then smart people went and they stuck a drilling rig and drilled down through the earth, and they hit this big huge underground lake of oil. That's what it's broken down. All that material for millions of years becomes an oily, thick yuck sludge. Sludge is great way to describe it. And this sludge is oil, and it's petroleum based. Petroleum is the sludgy oil coming out of the ground that is old trees, old shrubs, old dinosaurs, old fish from that era. That's what that is. And we take it, we suck it up out of the ground using rigs, and you filter it, you purify it using a still process, just like making moonshine. If you take a look at petroleum production, you have an area where it's heated up, and the gases that come off of it, one of the primary gases that come off of it are alkaloids, alcohol, right? Alcohol comes out, and then it gets sucked out the top or pressurized through the top, down through condensing coils, and what comes out are various forms of fuel. Now, if you do it one time, you just, get it to come up and then evaporate down one time, you end up with a lot of the light oils. Automotive oil is one of them. Out of the sludge comes automotive oil. The next step is, if you send it through another even hotter process, or I know the new systems just have one vertical column. Oil's here, they heat it, and depending on the heat levels, each level, like if you've ever seen water and oil mixed together, water and oil mixed together don't mix. Well, neither do the layers in the modern extraction process. So this layer will be WD-40, 10 weight 40, 10 weight 50. There will be a level where it's just kerosene and the jet plane fuels. And then on top of that, they'll have the automotive fuels, the different different types of auto fuels. And on top of that, for the very light alcohols, stuff like stuff that we could use inside of anything to do with eating, very light oils. And then you have natural gas sitting on top of it. That's natural gas. Sits on top of that. So that's the general idea. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There's like an hour. Well, everybody fist bump. You ready? 3, 2, 1. Fist bump.